Welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for taking the time to join us on using self-directed IRAs to invest in glamping resorts. It is top of the hour and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So let's get started. I'm Reneika Lightbourne. I'm excited to welcome our featured speaker, Ahmed Helmi, a seasoned real estate developer who specializes in mixed-use projects and also luxury glamping resorts. Ahmed's going to give us some insights on the economics of glamping, the market outlook, and of course, some opportunities investors can look out for if they're interested in investing in luxury camping communities. Thank you, Ahmed, for being our speaker today.
Thank you.
Before I turn it over, I do want to just give you a general overview of what self-direction is and how it works, and of course, the process to get started with us here at Advanta IRA. If you have questions, you're always welcome to put those in the question box. We'll answer as we go. And then, of course, any remaining questions we'll make sure allocate some time at the end as well. Again, I'm Reneika Lightbourne. I'm part of the business development team with Advanta since 2019. I'm also an Advanta IRA client prior to joining staff. So self-direction is something that I personally and professionally advocate for. So after today's webinar, if you want to have a one-on-one consultation, talk through your scenario, kind of get a better understanding of the different plan types that may be available to you, or just the do's and don'ts of the IRS rules, you're welcome to give me a call, send me an email, or go to our website to schedule a consultation with me. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. Please know that at Advanta IRA, we don't give our clients any tax, legal, or investment advice. All of the information that's presented today is just for educational purposes. As always, we encourage you to consult with your professional team. You want to make sure you're doing your due diligence. So talking with your attorneys, your CPAs, and financial advisors before making any investments. Just a quick takeaway, if this is a new concept for you, just know that any IRA or former employer plan qualifies to be self-directed. I'm sorry, I'm getting some kickback. Let me just put you on mute. So just know that any IRA or former employer plan qualifies to be self-directed. You choose what actually you want to invest in. Today, we're focusing specifically on glamping, so real estate related assets. And then of course, knowing that any IRA or any income that's generated from that investment flows back into the IRA. Just a little history about Advanta and who we are. We've been in business for about 22 plus years now as the leading self-directed IRA administrator in the business. We have about a little over $3 billion under administration. Our headquarters is located in Clearwater, Florida. Advanta has an office in Atlanta, but we do work with clients nationwide. One of the things that we take great pride in is providing our clients that concierge style service, where you have a dedicated account manager that's with you for the life of your account with us. And then of course, having experts like Ahmed come in and knowledge share with you with free educational content. Again, we encourage you to continue to attend our events. You can go to our website, see the latest, or check out our recordings. My colleague, Alex Perny, also is the host for our podcast. So exactly what is the self-directed IRA? Just very simply, it means that you get to use your retirement funds to invest or diversify outside of the traditional stocks, bonds, mutual funds. It allows you to have complete control over your retirement funds, complete control over the investment decisions. So if you're interested in using IRA funds to invest in, oil and gas, or mineral rights, or precious metals, cryptocurrencies, it's near limitless in terms of what's on the table for you. Most of our investors typically use IRA funds to invest in real estate. We know that's pretty broad. So whether it's a single family or it's a rental, short-term or long-term rental. Today, again, we're focusing specifically on glamping and luxury camping resorts, but you can certainly use IRA funds to invest in multifamily units and many other real estate related assets. So why do people choose to self-direct? You may look to self-direct for many different reasons. I'll just touch on 3 of them. So if you're an investor, maybe you don't know that you maybe didn't know that you can actually use retirement funds to do deals. So now you have the ability to actually, instead of taking out a bank loan or tapping into your emergency fund, if you have funds sitting idle in an old 401k, you can elect to use those to do your next investment. And then of course, stock market fatigue, the volatility. I don't have to tell you, we all seen what's been going on in the stock market as of late. But again, self-direction just allows you to really diversify and allow you to put some of your life savings into tangible assets like real estate. And then, of course, the tax benefits, having those rents, those profits, those dividends flow back into your account, tax-free or tax-deferred, whether it's a traditional or Roth IRA. Speaking of the different types of accounts that you can actually self-direct, it's the account types that you're already familiar with. So if you were to go to the IRS website, you won't see the term self-directed. What you will see is, again, for individuals, you have traditional or Roth IRAs. With traditional, you're getting the tax break up front. You grow your account over time. At distribution or at retirement, you pay taxes at that particular point. Whereas with a Roth IRA, you're electing to pay taxes up front. As long as you've held that Roth account for at least 5 years, you're 59 and a half, those distributions are tax-free. An inherited IRA, if you were to be the beneficiary and inherit an account that, from someone who transitioned, passed away, so whether it's, again, pre-tax or post-tax, if you are a small business owner, you have, side business, entrepreneur, 1099, account types specifically for business owners are SEP, Simples, and solo 401ks. Solo 401ks specifically have greater flexibility in that they have higher contribution limits. So again, if you want to know more about it, you're welcome to reach out to me to do a one-on-one consultation. Some lesser dollar accounts that is just as important, you can self-direct as an ESA, so if you educational savings account for your kids, or if you have a high deductible medical plan, you can elect to self-direct an HSA. Any old employer plan, whether it's an old 401k, 403b, or TSP type plan, can also be self-directed. The one caveat, a key thing to remember is if it's a current employer plan and you're not yet 59 and a half, that's where the restriction may come in. You can certainly see if they'll make an exception to allow you to, do an in-service rollover. But if it's an old employer plan, you can move it at will. There's no restrictions. When it comes to actually funding your account, there's 3 ways you can fund. One, which includes a transfer. So that's a trustee to trustee, IRA to IRA. It's non-taxable, non-reporting. In this scenario, you would simply just fill out our form. We would submit it over to the other IRA custodian on your behalf to move whatever dollar amount that you specify. If you have an old employer plan, again, 401k, 403b, TSP, and so forth, you can elect to do a direct rollover of those funds. In that scenario, you would actually have to initiate that request, but at Advanta, we'll walk you through the process in terms of reaching out to that old plan provider and telling them exactly you're looking to, you're not taking a personal distribution, you're just simply looking to move it over to another qualified retirement account. It's a tax-free movement of funds. It is reported, but it's not taxable as long as dollar for dollar is out and come in. And then, of course, you can also fund your account by making an annual cash contribution as long as you have earned income. Speaking of contribution, if you're still looking to contribute for 2024, you have up until next Tuesday, so April 15, which is fast approaching. You have a couple days. You can get those IRA funds into that account. So for 2024. For 2025, in terms of the dollar amount, you can contribute $7,000 if you're under the age of 50, $8,000 if you're over 50. Again, with SEP, Simple, Solo 401ks, those are your higher dollar accounts. Specifically for the Solo 401k, you can possibly contribute anywhere from $70,000, $77,500, or possibly $81,750, depending on your age. So again, that account allows you great contribution limits. For the ESAs, it's $2,000 per year per child. And with an HSA, again, as long as you have a high deductible plan, you can put in $4,300 for individuals, $8,550 for a family plan, with the ability to put in an additional $1,000 if you're 55 or older. So in terms of getting started with us, the process, we've really streamlined that for you in 3 simple steps. Step 1, fill out the paperwork. You can go directly to our website to fill out the IRA application, typically within 15 to 20 minutes. If you need assistance with that, myself or my colleague is here to guide you through that. Step 2, funding. Again, that can be a combination of transferring from an existing IRA, rolling over from an old employer plan, and or making an annual cash contribution as long as you have earned income. And then, of course, finally, step 3, what is it that you're interested in investing in? Is it something that Ahmed's going to say on the call today? Is it real estate? Is it, again, private equity? And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ahmed to make him the presenter.
Thank you, Reneika. Can you hear me? Just want to make sure.
Yes, I sure can. Yes.
Okay, excellent. And can you see my slide, the first slide, the Glamping and Outdoor Hospitality slide?
Yes, I can see your slide. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you for everyone attending. Just to give you a quick background about who we are and what we do. Well, I've been in resort development for the most part of my career, and then, COVID came, the lockdown. I was wondering what can I do, with my experience, and of course the outdoors, because we had no other choice but to, go to the national parks and the areas around us. I live in the DC area. And then I started doing research, and I found this thing called glamping. I've never heard that, word before, and so I started doing more research, and I found that that's a great intersection between what I always did and the outdoors. And since then, I've been doing, quite a few transactions. Our first transaction was very successful, thankfully, in 2021 with a large operator called Getaway House. They were just actually acquired by Marriott in December 2024. And we've been building these resorts across the nation. In Lake Placid, we had a project in Catskills. One of the very successful ones is in Bar Harbor. It's called Terra More, owned by Campgrounds of America. Also, we had a project in Yosemite, another one in Texas. And right now we have a big project that we're focused on in the Shenandoah area, Shenandoah National Park area close to DC. So I'd like to start with, just the outline. Basically, what I'll try to focus on today is what is glamping, what does it mean, and then we can talk about the economics, the supply and demand, sides of glamping. We can then focus on the target market. Who are the glampers? What are they looking for? What are the future trends in that space? And then I'd like to do a SWOT analysis, which is really what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats or risks in that space, and how can we mitigate risks in this hospitality market? And I'm happy to answer any questions at any point in time if anyone has questions. So let's start with the definition. And I mean, literally what glamping means, it means glamorous camping, and it was introduced to the Oxford Dictionary in 2016. So glamping has been around even before COVID. And it's really, if you think about it, if it all started in Africa, and if you think about these luxury African safari tents with ensuite bathrooms, full service experience, it was all inspired from, from all these African safari excursions. And actually, the person he's the person I know who introduced them. Her name is Sarah Dusek. She lives in Montana. She was living in Africa for many years, and then she started with 4 or 5 tents in Montana, and she had a great exit. She was acquired by a large institutional Wall Street firm, private equity firm called KSL, and we'll talk about this later. In a nutshell, if you think about glamping, it's really this intersection between camping and resorts. So you want to be in nature, but you don't want to rough it. You don't want to build your own tent. You don't want to bother about the logistics, but you still want to be in nature. Then you go to a glamping resort or a glamping property. In terms of what makes glamping really unique, it's all about the accommodations. People want to stay in a unique accommodation in a forest or close to a body of water with amazing views of the mountains or close to a national park. So the main most popular accommodations as we speak today are Airstreams. So AutoCamp created these glamping resorts with Airstreams, but however, they designed them in a very unique way. I talked about Terra More, which is a project I'm very proud of. I was involved in Bar Harbor, Maine, close to the Acadia National Park. These are luxury tents that rent from $350 a night up to $600 a night, depending on where are you in the season. And if you imagine, these are like built on platforms. Again, these are soft-sided structures, king-size beds, high-quality mattresses, high-thread count sheets, ensuite bathrooms, outdoor showers, fully serviced resort with a restaurant and a bar and a pool. For SDIRA, our brand, it's mostly cabins. We try to focus on cabins so we can operate year-round. And floor-to-ceiling windows, bringing the outside in, oversized showers. And I'll talk about the amenities in more detail in the next slide or two. Also, tree houses are very popular. There's this Auberge Primland Resort in Virginia. They offer these tree houses for $700 plus a night, depending on where you are in the season. Just to give
Matt,
you,
I do have a quick question. First, if you can maximize your slides to make it big, and then one of the questions came in that what type of travelers you think are fueling this type of growth for glamping?
So I'll talk about the target market in later on in the presentation, but it's primarily people who live in the city who really enjoy the outdoors, but probably they never camped before, or they did camp back in the days when they're younger, but they just don't want to rough it. And I'll talk about the demographics and psychographics later in the presentation. So I believe you're seeing the other types of accommodations at this point.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so these are basically different types of accommodations. So you also have teepees, you have yurts, you have domes in some areas, you have Conestoga wagons. So they come in all kind of designs, and I'll talk about which ones are more popular than the others. But I just wanted to give you an idea about the different types of accommodations that are in glamping. I'd like to jump into the economics, unless there are still any questions that relate to the accommodations. Okay.
No questions on that.
Okay, so in terms of the economics, I basically focused on the supply side and the demand side. So to start with demand for glamping. Like I said, it was always there, maybe since 2015. And even before that, they used to call them eco resorts and eco lodges. Glamping came along as a new word, but it's been around for a while. And like I've mentioned, COVID took it to another level. So in 2019, that's based on research, around 6.5 million people tried glamping. It increased in 2020, of course, with COVID to 10 million. It popped to 17 million in 2021. Huge increase between 2020 and 2021. And the question is, was it a fad, just a one-time thing because we had no options but to go to the outdoors, or is it a long-term trend? And today's presentation should answer that question. The good thing about, at least one bright thing about COVID is that it created a lot of awareness for the outdoors and for glamping. And although it was a rising trend, after 2021, a lot of people started knowing, at least the definition or the word glamping became way more popular, even on Google search. And there are a lot of research being done about the future of glamping, and based on projections, it is really growing. It's really outpacing the stock market, definitely outpacing the average GDP growth in the US. So the compounded average growth rate for glamping is around 10.2%. Other research says it's 16% a year. I just thought, I'd always like to be conservative, so it's 10.2%. So if you look at, the green curve, which is really glamping compared to the S&P 500, from 2025 to 2030, the S&P 500, which is really represents the stock market, will grow around 40%. That's all based on historical data. Who knows what will happen? In terms of glamping, it's estimated to grow 60%. So it's a great diversification strategy. I would say, of course, never put your eggs in one basket, but it's good as an alternative asset that is outpacing the stock market in terms of projections.
Well, this slide just answered the question that popped in. It says, how about the demand in years 2022 to 2024?
Yeah, and if we compare it to other real estate asset classes, again, it's a young industry, still growing, still fragmented, so it is outpacing other asset classes like multifamily, like industrial, even luxury hotels. It is outpacing all those because it is not consolidated yet. We're seeing all these big brands coming in, but they still have a small market share compared to, for example, luxury hotels, when it's completely dominated for the most part by the big brands and the big institutional Wall Street money. In terms of, again, research, this is a research that was done, third-party research that was done in 2022, and the sample size was 1,200 leisure travelers. So just a random sample of leisure travelers, they asked them, does glamping appeal to you? And 32% said yes. Just to give you an order of magnitude here, the leisure market in the US, the leisure travel market in the US in 2024 is $740 billion. That's the size of the market. So it's a pretty big market. So if 32% said glamping is appealing, tells you something about the future of glamping. In terms of, is it a one-off thing? It's just something I check the box, it's on the bucket list and I don't want to do again. It is not. And it seems that 74% of people or travelers who try glamping want to do it again. So it's a repeat kind of experience. It's not a one-off thing. It seems to be a new tradition. 4 out of 10 respondents said glamping is now part of their vacation plans. And if we look at the supply side, supply has been chasing demand since COVID, I'd say. And just to compare between 2015 and 2022, you see an increase from 91 properties to 230 properties. Most of them are mom and pops, and we're seeing a shift from mom and pops to like larger institutional grade resorts, but it all started with entrepreneurs and startups. And again, that's a similar statistic here. Between 2017 and 18, only 16% growth in the number of properties. It kept increasing from 2017 to 2022. You see a huge increase in the number of glamping properties. And I say properties, it could be a couple of tents in the backyard, could be a full-fledged, full-service resort, or even a cabin on Airbnb.
Okay, a couple questions just came in. It says, what are the most profitable regions or states for glamping?
That's a great question, and it really, resonates to this slide here. So it started with glamping, what we call glamping 1.0, mostly mom and pop, startups. A couple of tents in the backyard, close to a national park or close to a state park, and then it evolved again closer to 2016, 2017. We started seeing bigger institutional money coming in, and it has been primarily focused on national parks. So Yosemite, let's say, it was Tier 1 national park, Yosemite, maybe Smoky Mountains, Yellowstone, all these big Tier 1 that attract 10 million and above in terms of visitors a year. And these were the most profitable. Acadia National Park, of course. However, with trial and error, what we're seeing and what we learned is that national parks are great because it's a great demand driver. However, the problem with national parks is they're very seasonal. So in our experience in Terramore and Bar Harbor, we open in May, close in October, great occupancy rates, great average daily rates in terms of room rates, or in that case, tent rates. However, we shut down in October because Bar Harbor is a ghost town from October till April, and it's such a hassle to reopen a resort, hire people, start up operations. So what we learned, and honestly, Getaway House, which is, like I said, it was acquired by Marriott in 2024, they saw this early on where they said, okay, I'd rather be close to a Tier 2, maybe even a Tier 3 national park if I am close to a large MSA, a large city, because large cities can drive demand year-round because you're not only targeting the leisure traveler, you're also targeting corporate. So in the case of our project in DC, which we're developing right now, you have the Amazons, you have the Lockheed Martins, you have the Boeings, you have the defense industry, you have the pharma industry. So I can target the leisure traveler during the holidays and summer season, and maybe during spring and fall, but I have the corporate world that I can target for corporate getaways, especially with the hybrid model. There's more demand for face time in these destinations. Weddings is great, reunions, bachelor parties, Also, even in the low season, you can target, low budget groups, like, if someone or groups are, for silent retreats, meditation retreats, and so forth. So you can streamline your operations and open year round, especially in areas like Virginia, and even, if you go more south with, climates that allow you to operate year round. Did I answer the question?
Yes, you did. And another question, you just answered another question that came in terms of how do you monetize during the off season. I think you just spoke to that.
Yeah, and it's really a bell curve. So winter is low, and then it increases in the spring, peaks in the summer and fall, and then drops down. So it's more of a bell curve where we get very high occupancy rates and very high ADR in the peak. Then it really drops in the winter. However, you can still operate in the winter if you develop the right amenities on your property, having a spa, having hot tubs, having, a clubhouse with a fireplace. And so you can create demand in the winter if you're smart about your design early on.
Okay, another question came in, but really quick, a comment. So you'll get a copy. You can just simply reach out to me. You'll get an email notification from us with the recording, and you can just reply back like, hey, send me a copy of the slides and I'll get them over to you. So other question is, do you have sites or projects that you invest overseas, internationally?
No, we've been primarily focused on the US right now. And I mean, it's still a very fragmented, growing market. So we think the US still has a lot to offer. So no, I mean, for us, we don't invest overseas.
Okay, thank you.
And just, we were talking about Glamping 1.0. And actually 2.0 was, when we were starting seeing, these private equity firms investing in glamping. 3.0 is being closer to, instead of national parks, being closer to big cities. And now we're seeing Marriott's and Hilton's coming in the game. So Marriott just acquired Getaway House. We did an amazing, very financially rewarding transaction with Getaway House in 2021. They bought a property from us in the Shenandoah area. Now we're very glad to see them acquired by Marriott in 2024, which tells you something about the future of glamping. Also, Starwood Capital, a very large investor and operator in the hospitality world. They own the One Hotel in Miami, the Baccarat Hotel in New York. They're the ones who created the W Hotel, which was acquired by Marriott. They're investing in Field and Stream Lodge, which is an outdoorsy brand. Hilton just partnered with AutoCamp, Hyatt partnered with Under Canvas. So we're seeing more and more of these players coming in the game. However, their market share is relatively still small, which is good for the early adapters in terms of coming in early as an investor. It's like, I'd say, maybe self-storage back in the days. And that's I'm trying to share here a positioning map to show you, like in this positioning map, the different types of competing brands in that space. So I mean, on the y-axis, we're talking like amenities, low amenities versus high amenities in terms of these properties that offer glamping. And then on the x-axis, high price, low price. So we have 4 quadrants here. Let's work anti-clockwise. So Advanta, our brand, AutoCamp, Under Canvas, these are full service glamping resorts. And imagine like having housekeeping, you have room service, you have a clubhouse, a pool, a spa, a restaurant. That's what we're offering. And then these are like, more of the world-class top brands. Their price ranges from $350, I'd say $5,000. I mean, we've seen the Kardashians and spending $50,000 a night. So really the sky's the limit when it comes to these full service glamping resorts. But usually the price is $350 and above. If we go to quadrant 2, it's these your traditional RV campgrounds who are starting to offer glamping as an option. So you'd see like, these luxury, relatively fully amenitized tents and cabins in these RV campgrounds. Their price range starts from $100 to $250, I'd say. Quadrant 3 is like Getaway House. They're more like 30, 50 cabins on a property with trails, but it's a limited service experience where you have a very cool tiny cabin, or very cool floor-to-ceiling, structure. And it has a small kitchenette, has a small bathroom, has a fire pit. You can buy wood on the property. However, if you need housekeeping, if you need help, you gotta contact someone. They're not on the property, they'll come if you need them. Housekeeping is not on a daily basis, so more of a limited service experience. And then you have the Airbnbs, where and this is really a wide range of when it comes to pricing. It's an Airbnb cabin that markets itself on Airbnb as a platform. However, again, it's limited service, it's limited experience, because you're on your own in a cabin in the woods. And just to give you an example of a full service resort, like for us, Maya Vida, our 4 cornerstones, the 4 pillars of the brand is explore, indulge, invigorate, and impact. And this is what really the glamping community is looking for. Exploration is like on site. We like to buy bigger properties, 180 acres, for example, and our property in the Shenandoah. And it has to have a wow factor on it, like a body of water, an amazing view of the Blue Ridge Mountains, maybe, or a heavily wooded property, some streams on the property, wildlife. So we like to have nature trails on the property, maybe bird watching, stargazing, storytelling, conversation around the fire. So we like to have communal fireplaces on the property. And then in terms of, you have to be in an area that has nature-based attractions. So Shenandoah National Park in our case, Yellowstone, and maybe Acadia National Park. All these national parks is a great demand driver. In our case, we're surrounded by so many wineries, so it's also a great attraction, because if you're in a winery, you want to spend the night in a glamping resort, not at a Holiday Inn. Glampers like to have, culture, maybe foodies, local wineries around the area. Like I said, sorry, it skipped to the, accommodations. We've talked about accommodation. When it comes to design, we try to, really research the local area and try to reflect the local culture in our design. So we try to be rooted in the area itself. Invigorate, I mean, when it comes to invigoration, it's always good to have a spa on the property. It really blends in with the idea of nature and wellness. And it's not necessarily a 4 seasons spa. It's a big cabin, floor-to-ceiling windows in the woods with a few massage rooms, a hot tub, an outdoor sauna. But it's not a full-fledged 5-star experience. In terms of impact, a lot of these glamping travelers are very, environmentally conscious. They like sustainable resorts. So we try to design and construct with minimizing the, tree cutting. We try to be low on the land in terms of, infrastructure as much as possible, of course, because again, it's a fully serviced resort. Try to, recycle and reuse as much as possible. And to give you an example on our project in the Shenandoah area, so luckily, I mean, there's this old dairy barn on the property, 100 years old. Instead of, demoing it and building a new clubhouse, it takes work, but we are repurposing this barn into a clubhouse. It was built in the 1920s. I think it was used to buy them from Sears and assemble them on the property. So this is the architectural drawings, 35-foot cathedral ceiling, amazing woodwork that is still in good shape. Nano windows, like, to bring the outside in, pools, designated fire pits, and so forth. So this is how our barn looks today. That's the future clubhouse on the property.
A question just came in. I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
A question came in terms of how long does it take to build a fully operational site? Like how long will it take for you to build this particular project?
Yes, so the real challenge is the entitlements. Most of these properties are zoned agriculture, and to change the zoning in these small towns is very challenging. Mostly generational farmers, they're not pro-development. So if that's the biggest hurdle. We buy these properties, they're not expensive because they're agricultural land, but before we buy them, we go through the zoning process. If we succeed, and sometimes it takes a year or 2 years, then we go into the design phase, which can take a year. However, we never start we never start raising capital. We take this initial risk first because it's very risky. Once we get the entitlements, we start on the permitting phase, which takes a year. Construction takes another year. So all in, we go to market when we are 1 year before construction, and then construction takes another year. For the project in question, we break ground in August 2025, open the resort August 2026.
Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of target market, the primary target market is really the millennial market. These are people born between 1981 and 1996. They're very much tuned to this kind of unique experience, immersive, vacations, as opposed to going to a four-wall, 4 or 5-star resort. They want to pay for this unique, memorable experience. It has to be Instagrammable, of course. And just to give you an example, there's this very cool glamping resort on Governors Island, 10 minutes with a ferry from Manhattan. And this is a fact. I mean, you are sitting in this luxury tent watching, boats coming in and out of the Hudson River. You're seeing the Statue of Liberty. However, you're paying $900 a night. Same day, Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton would be $800 or $700 a night. So why would someone pay in a tent more than they would pay in a Four Seasons? Because this is what people are looking for. They want something unique, something memorable. So millennials are really into this kind of experience. Household income is usually $100,000 and above, and of course the sky's the limit. They usually, they have children, so we try to design our cabins 40% families with larger cabins, 60% double occupancy for couples. In terms of, based on research, the interest in glamping, millennials are number 1, Gen Zs are number 2. Gen Zs is the next generation that is ranging between 1996 to 2015. However, they don't have the same income, and many of them cannot afford upscale glamping. However, they would go to more affordable glamping experiences. Then, of course, the baby boomers and Gen X's, and then the silent mature.
Question just came up is, so the demographics include all of these data points, or is it a mixture of these attributes?
It's a mixture of these attributes.
Okay.
In terms of preferred accommodations, cabins are number 1. When the respondents in this research said cabins is our number 1 preferred accommodation, then tree houses and tiny homes follow. Funny enough, canvas tents did not come on top. 43% of respondents that said they would prefer canvas tents. And the reason is, tents have a very short season. It is almost impossible to heat a tent, and this is what we learned in Bar Harbor. If I stayed in Bar Harbor in May, it was freezing. So I'd say before mid-June till late August. So between mid-June and late August, it's comfortable. Before that, after that, it's pretty cold. Even we had R values, the thickness of the fabric was, the R value was 14. It was still cold.
A couple questions that just popped in. It says, what's the average staff to guest ratio at your glamping resort?
Well, that's a great question. And so what makes glamping unique is that the profit margins are higher than 4 or 5-star resorts because the ratio is lower than the average. So like for 75 unit resort, we would need maybe 60 employees. That assumes it includes a restaurant and a bar. So it's definitely less than the 1:1 ratio that you see in 4-star resorts, definitely less than the 1.5 or 2 employees per unit in the luxury resorts. So you don't need as many employees to operate these resorts because honestly, the guests are not as demanding because they're really in nature. They're not as demanding and their expectations are not as high as it would be in a 4 or 5-star resort.
Okay, next question is, do you self-manage or do you hire like a third-party management company?
So we have a third-party management company that we also are involved in because what we learned is if you get a third-party management company and you're not involved, it's very hard for them to realize your vision. So what we do is that we have a third-party management company. I'm a developer, but in our team we have highly experienced managers who, Henry Cyrus is like 40 years experience, was managing the Fairmont in South Africa. He was involved in Terramore, did a great job there, Hilton, Sheraton. So we, in a way, self-manage through a third-party management company that we also partially own.
Okay, next question that came in is, have you put in many splits for the AC or heat or?
Yes, so these cabins do have heat pumps in them, so we can operate year round.
Thank you.
So interesting enough, the Hilton 2024 report was very assuring for us in the glamping community, because Hilton does their research, they're agnostic. They do it across all of their guests, whether it's a garden inn or it's mostly traditional resorts and hotels. And they interviewed 10,000 travelers. And funny thing that we thought was very interesting actually for us and very encouraging is that 52% of their respondents, and they were all millennials and Gen Zs in that case, 52% said exploration and adventure is on the top of their list when it comes to travel. So, and that's 140 million travelers in the US, if you combine Gen Zs and millennials together. So that's huge. Also, connecting with people and culture is something that really glamping properties offer. And 45% of all travelers said, and it's not only millennials and Gen Zs across the board, they said they want to connect with other people and they want to connect with the local culture, which is something that really glamping resorts, like I said, offer. Food and beverage is key for travelers, and also recharging and a good night's sleep. That's why we really invest in our mattresses, we invest in our pillows, we make sure that our sheets are high thread count sheets, because it's all about recharging and having a good night's sleep in these vacations that travelers are looking for. So these are the four main things that our travelers are looking for based on the Hilton 2024 report, and really checks the boxes for a glamping resort.
Okay, a couple questions just popped back in. I'm circling back to the many splits. What about yurts? Like, do you include that in as well?
I honestly don't have experience with yurts because yurts are very challenging when it comes to the floor plan. It's hard to, divide the floor plan, at least for us. So we don't have experience in yurts, but I've seen yurts that do have heat pumps in them. And they use a lot of pony walls in them, so they don't completely separate one, a room from another room, for example.
Okay, next question is, how many people in the Gen Z X?
How many people what, sorry?
It says, how many people in Gen Z X? Like, how many people? I think it's for your previous slides.
Yeah, so total population of millennials is around 70 million. Gen Zs are another 70 million, give or take. So combined, there are 140 million travelers. I mean, in terms of population, 140 million people in the US are either Gen Zs or millennials.
Okay. Next question is related in terms of how are your deals structured with investors?
It's the typical real estate syndication where we act as general partners and our investors act as limited partners. And basically, the general partner and the limited partner, what governs the relationship is an operating agreement between the GP and the LP that defines the roles and responsibilities of each party.
So next question is relating to, could we provide Ahmed with contact information? So yes, Ahmed will, on his slide, you'll have his contact information to where you can reach out to him directly if you want to know more about investing or you have questions about any of his projects. Next question is, do you have a minimum investment amount?
Yes, the minimum investment amount is $25,000, and I mean, from there onwards, there are additional perks if you invest. Like, for example, if you invest 50,000 and above, we give you part of our promote. The GPs make most of their money from bonuses that they make if they achieve certain returns to their investors. So we give part of it to an investor who's putting 50,000 above. However, the minimum threshold would be 25,000.
Okay. You will get a copy of this recording. Yes, it's going to be uploaded on a YouTube channel later today, but you'll also get an email with with a copy of it. Thank you, Ahmed.
You're welcome. Do we have time for a SWOT analysis?
Yes, we do. We still have about 13 minutes or so.
Okay. So let's talk about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and risks in that space. So all the attendees can have, a full picture about, the glamping world and what's happening. So in terms of strengths, it is really fast growing, still fragmented. Like I said, it's not dominated by the big players yet, although we're seeing signs. High profit margins. Someone asked, about the ratio of employees to units. It is still relatively lower than 4 or 5-star resorts and hotels. And that's one thing. The other thing is really, at the end of the day, a tent or a cabin does not cost as much as it will cost to build a typical resort. Like our project is 180 acres. We're really disturbing at the end of the day 20 acres. Because the whole concept is not to cut trees and minimum paving and so as much as we can. So the cost of development is not as high. Also, in terms of strengths, ecotourism is on the rise, has been on the rise for a long time. Sustainability and environmental conscious travelers are growing by the day in terms of segment in the leisure travel world. There's an ability to scale with lower overhead than traditional resorts. There's a lot of flexibility in accommodations. You can get very creative with what you want to do in your unit and how you want it, not unlike your typical traditional resorts. Another very cool thing about glamping, because it's not dominated by the big brands, the Hiltons, the Hyatts, the Marriotts. You don't have to be on their platforms. You don't have to have their flags to operate. They take a big chunk of our revenues, whether it's franchise fees, consulting fees, marketing fees. And what usually people go for brands because you need their loyalty platform. You need the honors program to bring you in guests. The cool thing about glamping is highly dominated by social media in terms of marketing and by influencers. So 80% of reservations come directly through our website, and marketing is all on social media and influencers and engaging the community. So that saves a lot of money, a lot of expenses. Another thing that is interesting when we talk about, actually, let's talk about weaknesses before opportunities. Seasonal operations is a challenge, especially close to Tier 1 national parks. When I talk about the Yosemites, even Yosemite was quite cold in the winter. Glacier National Park, Yellowstone, Acadia, and that's why we prefer, generally speaking, warmer areas, and we prefer being close to large MSAs. Like DC has 5 million people, so we can still. New York, actually, even it's colder in the Catskills. I used to be in Autocamp in October, November, and you see that Google has a buyout of the whole resort because Google, office in NYC is only 2.5 hours away. So this is how we deal with the seasonality, being close to large MSAs. The land development process is very complicated, and the entitlement process is very risky. And that's why we never open our projects to investors until we guarantee the zoning, because it's a risky business, 20% success rate. However, it is worthwhile, because once you get the entitlements, just the dirt, the value of the dirt sometimes goes up by 7x without putting a shovel to the ground, because you change the zoning from agriculture to commercial. And it's also honestly trial and error. We fail sometimes, we succeed sometimes, but we're getting better and better at it. So for example, it took us 2 years with Madison County, the project in question in the Shenandoah area, to get the entitlements. However, once you build trust with the community and the council, you eventually get. In terms of the complex land development aspect, These are off-the-grid properties, so we have to do a lot of due diligence to make sure the property lends itself to a resort. Is the soil good enough to perk for septic systems? Do we have enough reserve fields? Do we have enough underground water for our water system? We want to make sure we're not affecting the water table and taking water from the neighbors. So it is a complex process. However, there's a learning curve to it, and thankfully we mastered it across the years. In terms of risk, like I mentioned, regulatory changes and zoning restrictions is one big roadblock in this business. Climate events, of course, like in California and Yosemite, we were developing a project in Yosemite, and literally there was a fire 2 years ago, and it really hurt the property. And it was still, we didn't put a shovel to the ground, but we were still in the design phase, and we had big problems there. Also, the cost for fire protection is very, very high in these areas. Economic downturns, that's something that goes across the board. Recessions are recessions, and what we try to do is have a diverse market, try to target, different groups at different points. Being close to an MSA is better than being highly dependent on leisure, just leisure. It gives you some immunity, but at the end of the day, recession hits us all.
I'm sorry, go ahead, finish that, and then we'll talk through the two questions just popped in.
In terms of labor shortages, it is a problem. Like in Bar Harbor, Maine, it was a problem because you don't have a large city for labor supply. And we had to go for J1s and foreign students who come in the summer. However, the cool thing about being close to a large MSA is that you have labor, you have universities, you have hospitality schools. So that's why we like being close to like in our project, we're close to Charlottesville, we're close to DC, we're close to Richmond. So there is supply of labor that helps with in these rural areas.
Okay, two questions. What are the yearly rate of returns on investment over the past 5 years?
So these projects, they can range between 25% to 30% IRR, pretty high up there in terms of returns. You can make up to between 2.5 to 3.0, sometimes more in terms of equity multiple. The cool thing about coming early in the process is that what we do to attract seed investors as opposed to institutional investors that come later in the game when we have a full set of drawings and we're ready to go to breaking ground is that with early investors, we don't put a premium on the entitled land. So we buy the property as agricultural land at a discount. So for all the early investors, they buy it with us at the initial agriculture appraisal. Once we get closer to breaking ground, we do a new appraisal based on the entitlements, and we get a pop in the valuation. So everyone benefits in terms of us and the early investors that came along. So that really increases the return because the low basis of the land acquisition.
You actually just answered the next question, which was, does the investor benefit from the zoning bump in value?
The early investors do. So the project that we're raising capital for right now, just if I may say, we got a property for $1.4 million as agricultural land. That's 180 acres. Today, based on comps, it would be probably 4 or 5 times that value because we did secure the entitlements for it.
Thank you. That's it for the questions for now. I know you have another box you want to go through.
So in terms of opportunities, the opportunities in the future is to tap into the corporate market, the wellness and destination weddings. And this is how we design our resorts. We make sure there's a pavilion there. Weddings are huge and they're very profitable. Events are huge and very profitable. Imagine like in a restaurant, one waiter can serve maybe 4 to maybe 6 tables. In a wedding, one waiter can serve up to 25 people. It's a very lucrative business. So we try to diversify our revenue streams by having wellness, like a spa, having destination weddings, opening our restaurants to the public. Having a unique restaurant like a barn is a great demand driver. We can also, we've been also looking at the idea of getting grants to rehabilitate the forest. So there's a lot of incentives to, like, for example, our property has some invasive species, so we work with the Department of Forestry. You pay honestly like $200 to have a stewardship plan to rehabilitate your forest. So there's a lot of government support. USDA, which is great for glamping as opposed to other asset classes, they do guarantee construction loans in these agri-tourism areas. So you don't get, you're more immune to the credit crunches and the markets because you have a guaranteed loan from USDA. It's a slow process. I think this administration is trying to streamline the process in terms of environmental assessments and so forth. But it's a great option as opposed to getting a construction loan from a traditional bank that really gets affected by the markets. So that's also an opportunity that is great. Technology has been great. Instead of having all this labor and people, because they're in the wilderness, you don't need a phone in the cabin. People just text us if they need anything. We have apps that we communicate with all the guests with. So because their expectations, hey, I don't want a telephone in my unit. I don't want a TV in my unit. I just want to sit around the fire, and have a conversation with my spouse or my friend as opposed to watching TV. We have 2.5 miles of trails, so people can just walk the trails. They can e-bike, they can do stargazing. So you don't need to spend as much money on amenities as you would in your traditional resort. I hope we're on time. Yep.
Yes, we're right at the top of the hour. So if you can share your contact information, I know a couple of people asked for it already. So
yeah. So that's my email address. That's my phone number. You guys feel free to call me or email me. I'm happy to share the pitch deck. If someone wants a one-on-one presentation to discuss the financials and the cash flows, I'm happy to do so.
Wonderful. If you have any remaining questions, go ahead and feel free to put those in the question box. Ahmed, again, I want to thank you for coming in and giving our audience something different with glamping. I know it's a niche within a niche, but an opportunity for growth. If you have questions related to self-directed IRAs, please feel free to reach out to me or one of my colleagues. You can go to our website, advantaira.com. It's a wealth of knowledge, anything and everything related to the self-direction. And any parting words before we end today's webinar? Ahmed, do you have any parting words before we end? If not, I'll say thank you all and happy investing.
I appreciate the opportunity and thank you for organizing this, Reneika, and thank you for everyone attending.
Thank you. Happy investing, everyone.